Doug Karsch,
Look at those tops.
Wolverines, is here. You've heard him for years in the Michigan Radio Network as the sideline reporter. Now he is the big man upstairs, the play-by-play voice of the Wolverines. Doug, great to have you with us out of the dentist chair.
That's right.
Hurt to come here and talk with us. Welcome.
Well, I'm sorry about the delay. I sat in the chair for 20 minutes before they got to my teeth, but I was very pleased that there were no cavities. It didn't take them that long. So
excellent. You're looking good. You could do simultaneously TV as you will.
Yeah. Big Ten Network. Here comes Doug Karsch, right?
Well, I did it because of this appearance, right? I had to look good for you guys.
Hey, the team.
That's right.
Now, let me ask you this. We've spent
half hour,
25 minutes talking about the Harbaugh suspension, all of the things involved. I would like to know from Doug Karsch how you're seeing this whole thing and your take on the ramifications, why you make your own self-imposed without an agreement from the NCAA that, okay, this is going to be good. We're gonna play ball and go along.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of play here. I'll start with this. In covering these things for years, I've discovered that it is best to let the processes play out before I get too deep into guilt or innocence. I truly believe that if you have broken a rule, then accept the punishment and move on. So if at the end of this it's 3 games or 4 games or 6 games or 8 games or whatever, you accept it, you vow to do better, and you move on. But I also believe in due process and have applied this on the air for years. And years ago, I remember there was my daughter's yelling in the background. Can you hear her, or is this just distracting?
We caught her.
Hey guys, can we keep it down a little?
This makes it real. This
sorry.
Real time.
Anyway, I believe in due process, right? And I remember years ago there was a charge against Mark D'Antonio in East Lansing over an improper firing of an employee that ended up with the Jones Day group coming in and investigating. And at the end of that, they found no wrongdoing, right? So I've often preached patience. Everybody wants to rush to judgment on these things. And, I talked to Dan Wetzel today at Yahoo Sports, and he said he thinks this is probably the bulk of this story. By the time we get around to a hearing in January or February, it's probably going to calm down. Cooler heads will prevail. It feels a little bit personal because the NCAA did something they've never done before, which is come out and speak directly to fans and message board posters as it pertains to it's just a cheeseburger, because it's not just a cheeseburger.
Right.
To have that as an official statement sounds like it's gotten personal to them. Nobody at Michigan said that. Jim Harbaugh didn't say it. So they're responding to fans.
Yes, exactly.
Which is really, really a unique case circumstance for this thing. So I'm not rushing to judgment. I think that it seems so incredibly unlikely that someone would lie over secondary violations. That's the virtual slap on the wrist.
Right.
So why would you mislead investigators over secondary violation accusations? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I doubt it would make sense to Jim Harbaugh. And he has been adamant about having nothing to be ashamed of, and that, someday he will say his piece. And I look forward to it. You guys know, and you've been around Jim Harbaugh, when he's got something to say, he says it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, in a world where everybody wants to rush to judgment and hot takes are big in my business, I'm going to hold off because I think Jim deserves the due process, and with respect for the process, let it play out. But some things don't add up in this one, and so we'll see how it does play out.
Well, Doug, can I throw a question about? Do you think the 3-game self-imposed? Jim Harbaugh was involved in that decision making. Was this a Ward Manuel decision? Was it higher up than that? Because it sounds like he told his team that he was. I've been told. Was he involved in it?
I think I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think there's a weird vibe that I get from Michigan fans that they think that these entities of Ward Manuel and his office and Jim Harbaugh and his group operate completely independent of one another, and I don't know that that's true. And I also, again, when he says things, I'm skeptical that he didn't know that this was coming, and I'm skeptical. Like, when people don't understand things, I think they immediately think, well, it's being run by idiots. And I know people that work very closely to this situation that are not idiots. They're very smart, and they understand how college athletics works. And sometimes when things don't add up, you later hear a story that makes you go, oh, that's what happened. And it all makes sense. So, I've got calls in and I'm constantly talking to people, and I haven't heard the, oh, that makes sense story yet. And when I do, I'll share it. But, it's just such a strange, like, again, talking to Wetzel, who's covered NCAA violations from Bill Self to North Carolina academic fraud to all kinds of stuff. Right. Yeah. He said this case is so strange. It's so different than any he's ever covered before. But he also said, look at Jim Harbaugh's track record. He seems to operate best when there's chaos around him. And so, yeah, I guess we'll see.
One more on this topic before we talk.
Let me just add one thing. Though, from Michigan's perspective, why they might have decided on the 3 games because that 3 games would be a bit much for secondary violations or level 2 violations. They have a season to protect too. They have a program to protect. So this might be about, okay, if we overpunish in terms of what typical, because if you look at it, the NCAA views things in percentage of the season. Like this, they don't see it as a 3-game suspension. They see it as a quarter of the season, which would exceed a lot of level 2 violations. Mm-hmm. And it's probably not going to impact Michigan on the field in any way. So if they overpunish now, they might avoid any sort of have to forfeiture of wins later. So that might have some motivation behind this as well. Again, I'm not reporting this. I don't know this. This is just some speculation as to why 3 games was decided upon.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense when you put it that way.
Could be.
One more thing that before we get to actual football talk, and that would be this. And I asked Tom before you came on about this. Does this in any way make you feel less inclined to believe that Jim Harbaugh will make this his last stop in his coaching career, just because, it's one more block in the wall. It's one more, maybe Jim Harbaugh behind the scenes shaking his head and saying, look, we know there are major cheaters out there, and there have been for decades. And now I'm dealing with this. I just wonder if it might make him more inclined at some point to take another hard look at the NFL.
Well, you can't go to the NFL without an NFL offer.
Right.
There has to be the right job and the right owner and the right people that want you. And that's not always the case. So at this point, it hasn't really changed my opinion until I see what jobs open up. Jim Harbaugh is a hell of a good football coach. And Jim Harbaugh, the healthiest on the field Michigan has been, we're in the middle of it right now.
Right.
He's got it up and running. He's got a chance with the quarterback that they have now, the quarterback in the pipeline, and the quarterback down the road that they're trying to get, where he can really set this thing up for a good, long, healthy run. And I have to think that that's still extremely attractive to Jim Harbaugh. And having to make that decision is so far off that I think in the end, cooler heads prevail on all fronts. I really believe that. I believe that this 3-game suspension very well could be it. I don't know that, but I wouldn't be shocked. And I think any if this season goes the way it very well could go, and how it might play out in recruiting, I think Jim Harbaugh might say, okay, it's really mostly behind me now. Let's go run this thing and run the course with what I got up and running right here, right now. But Doug, if he doesn't, he loves his staff, and I feel like the staff is in capable hands that, we might get a look at the heir apparent in game 1, 2, or 3, or all of them.
Yeah, well, but Doug, don't you think that what Michigan delivers in terms of a rewritten contract after whatever is accomplished this year will have impact when his ego, we're all got egos, becomes involved in that equation along with NFL enticement?
Well, it could. I mean, I know that Michigan was like, okay, we need to show the NCAA we're serious. We do want to sign you to a new contract, but we are not going to do it. Well, with this hanging over they won't. Right. How do you convince the NCAA you're serious and give the guy that's under the scrutiny a new contract, right? So they wanted to get this over with. Maybe that's why they went 3 games. Hey, we took this seriously. We overpunished based on level 2 violations that we have accepted that we're committed. And the only debate is over whether or not there was a level 1 violation, but we've overpunished, and now maybe they're more comfortable offering the contract that has probably been sorted out behind the scenes.